Hi there, and welcome to my channel One Wall. Today I will be talking about anime, then later on in the video I will be talking about some of my own work history. I know that it doesn't sound like much of a story to tell, but it's probably going to be more interesting for you than it sounds right off the bat. There will be a timer in the description of this video so that if you do not want to hear about anime, you can go ahead and skip to the My Story section at the end of this video. Or at the end of the anime section anyways. Almost all of you already know what anime is, but to avoid confusing this with American cartoons, I'm going to tell you what anime is. Anime is a computer or hand-drawn animation originating from Japan. In the country of Japan, anime is used to describe all of their works of animation, and outside of Japan, their works are regarded as anime. Some of the earliest televised anime to air in the United States was in the late 1960s. Although here in the United States there is still much controversy over anime due to things like depictions of nude minors, its absurdly graphic plots, so to speak, and some other relatively taboo subject matter. Despite these huge hang-ups, anime is still making a huge boom in modern America. Some of anime's best series of all time, as in the most highly rated, include Attack on Titan, Death Note, Naruto, Fairy Tail, Full Metal Alchemist, Sword Art Online, and Dragon Ball Z. As far as I know, the most highly regarded creator of anime is Studio Ghibli, which Walt Disney acquired worldwide distribution rights to in 1966. Being a big fan of these works, I had probably seen almost every anime worth watching, as I'm sure most other anime fans would claim. My personal favorite anime show of all time is Elfen Lied, starring a character named Lucy, who is a young mutant that was bred by the government to be the ultimate weapon. Armed with unique and very powerful tools, she escapes the government and is then pursued by them. This show is quite dramatic at times and certainly has its corny moments. It also does a great job with its character building and is even better with the characters' interactions with each other. Some of my other favorites are a little more humorous and nonchalant in comparison. And these include ReZero, Rise of the Shield Hero, and High School DxD. There's just something about the cheesiness and usually childish humor that I really enjoy. These products also tend to have a fresh surprise in them or two, so it doesn't feel like I'm watching a remake of a story that I watched 100 times as a child. And I'm sure many other Americans kind of feel the same way about those when you get around to them, right? Now that I am finished with that subject for the time being, I will go ahead and tell you some of my work history and the sort of experiences that I had along the way. To begin, I was 16 years old when I began working for my father at a part-time job at a port in Oregon, part-time working at the docks. Then once I turned 18 years old, I began my career as a commercial fisherman. And what is a commercial fisherman, you might ask? Also known as a fisher, a commercial fisherman uses fishing rods, nets, and traps to catch fish, as well as other marine life. The types of fishing I preferred as part of my job included salmon fishing, tuna fishing, crab fishing, and rock fishing. The salmon fishing, in my opinion, is the most monotonous, meaning dull and repetitive and tedious, or lacking in variety and interest. Salmon are caught with a long metal fishing line with monofilament lines hanging off of it. The hooks are on the end of the monofilament line to hook the fish by mouth. When a salmon bites the hook, it shakes the wire, causing a cowbell that is attached to the boat to shake and make noise. This noise alerts the deckhand that there is a fish on the line. The fish are then slowly pulled up to the boat as a gurney spins, coiling the wire in it. The hardest fishing I have done, I would say, is Dungeness crab fishing. A very fast pace and I would say physically brutal in order to perform this job. You would most likely need some prior conditioning of sorts, and you probably want to know how well you will last on the ocean, as seasickness alone can definitely hinder you from performing your job duties. You may be required to lift up to 200 pounds and be capable of launching it above your own head. That is, if you are less than 6 feet tall. You must be capable of doing this constantly and continuously throughout your workday. And that is not to mention also performing this job on a shaking boat in bad weather. My absolute favorite fish to catch would be tuna. Doing this commercially, the fishing poles are removed and the fish are captured using a technique called hand lining. This is where the person performing the job is grabbing the fish line by hand and pulling it to the boat, passing the fish line back and forth from your left hand to your right hand, coiling the line on your wrists and a gurdy. This skill requires some practice to master, and strong wrists and forearms, and stamina. As the tuna fish bite the hooks, swimming at about 43 miles per hour, the fishing line wiggles sporadically, at which point the deckhand must alert the captain of the boat so that they can slow the boat down. The speed of the boat while tuna fishing is called trolling speed. That is usually a speed of 9 to 15 knots, or a unit of speed equal to the pneumatical mile per hour. The objective at this point is to hand line the tuna fish one by one onto the boat. The fish are then put into a tank and begin shaking their tail fins very sporadically, causing loud banging sounds that might be similar to some drums being played together simultaneously. Another great experience I got to have pursuing at this career was working temporarily on a charter boat to do charter fishing. Charter fishing is fishing from a vessel carrying a passenger or passengers that are engaged in recreational fishing. Although there is little weight lifting involved compared to other types of commercial fishing, I found deckhanding on a charter boat to be the most stressful. The company that I was working for catered to many different types of fishing, such as tuna fishing, halibut, and rockfish, etc. My favorite part of this job was meeting so many new people on a daily basis. Personally, I have a knack for assisting people with projects, so it was an enlightening experience for me, as well as educational. It's also the only segment of my life that I can really recall where I was supposed to be performing these kinds of skills. However, it was still a difficult job to perform, physically and intellectually straining. A deckhand may have to cater to about 25 passengers on a trip. That's 25 persons and 25 fishing poles to keep strict attention to at all times while performing this job. As a fish hits the top of the water, the deckhand will pull the fish to the boat and reset the hook so that the passenger may continue fishing. A charter deckhand performs some special skills to undo knots in the lines when and if they intertwine together, which they do constantly, and re-rig the hooks and other gear at the end of the fishing pole so that the passengers may continue their fishing. The one thing more important than the boat is the people who are on it. So developing a keen eye for detecting dangerous behavior is one of the most important things to do. The most common cause of dangerous behavior being seasickness, at which point the deckhand must insist that the passenger take a break from fishing. Once sitting on the boat, this can settle your stomach and cure some of your nausea. Other than those vexing chores, this job is pretty much about maintaining a fun and safe atmosphere on the boat. I always found it especially exciting when a passenger caught a substantially large fish, especially a particular rockfish called lingcod, because they look like a giant dinosaur as they approach the top of the water. And this wraps up my summary of what commercial fishing is. My next adventure on the list was starting as a dishwasher and becoming the head cook at the restaurant that I was working in South Dakota. I was working at this job for 2 or 3 months as a dishwasher before being promoted to the cook. I was always working split shifts, making it difficult for me to do much outside of my job. This is the point in my life that I was socially isolated almost completely. So I spent much of my short periods of free time studying America's infrastructure, as well as YouTube, among other popular media outlets. While I was at work, there was typically a new dishwasher or two that I was training on the job, as well as performing my other duties, which included stocking freezers, taking inventory of our products, food preparation, keeping an eye on the buffet lines, cooking the food, sanitation, and safety inspections, and doing my best to keep my other co-workers sunny and bright. At times business was a little slow, at which point I usually enjoyed conversation with the waitresses and or the dishwashers. After performing this job for a little over 2 years, I decided to find work that was a little bit more stable for me and better pay. It was at this point that I went to work as a quality control professional at a meat factory in South Dakota. Working 44 hours a week at this point, I was feeling much more successful and fulfilled. I also did not mind at all receiving benefits such as regular time off and steady work schedule. Outside of putting in more overtime, typically resulting in 55 to 66-hour work week, there were some who worked more overtime than this, as I was not typically signing up for overtime myself. Still being an isolated person from the rest of the world around me, I continued lots of research with most of my free time. If I was not consuming my mind with intellectual information, I was either catching up on animated cartoons, new movies, or dancing to music in my apartment. After a little under 3 years of working at a meat factory, I decided to leave my job after my relationship at work became rather abusive. Not only was I performing much more work while I was working than others at the plant, as proven by documents that record productivity, and my employer refusing me any regular time off for the past 3 months that I had worked there. The last job I will be discussing today was working as a personal support worker in Oregon. One of the early requirements for this job was to be trained in CPR, or an emergency procedure that combines chest compressions, often with an artificial ventilation, in an effort to manually preserve intact brain function until further measures can be taken to restore spontaneous blood circulation and breathing in a person who is in cardiac arrest. This job was another very enlightening experience for me overall, as I was learning so much about the human mind and its functions. Though it was mostly the hands-on experience that taught me the most, working with clients who had disabilities, my job included social coaching, maintaining a healthy scheduled day, and catering to behavioral problems. The best part of this job for me was simply working with the clients. Most of them were fascinating characters who find happiness in areas that I cannot reach intellectually myself. I did only perform this job for 6 months. However, I am more than happy to have had the experience. With this one, I feel like I found a job that I am not the best equipped to handle. This job requires so much patience and has a certain level of spiritual rhythm that just bogs my little head too much sometimes. The simple fact that I was not feeling well upstairs after performing this job for a while is good enough reason for me to leave that job, especially when it is noticed by my coworkers and employers. However, to ensure I never attempt the same sort of work again, my employer was sure to terminate me after I got hit while parked at a mini-mart, and then returned my report of the incident. It was a car accident. I know how it sounds, but the only thing my employer wrote as to the reason I was terminated was failure to follow direct orders. When I questioned them on this, they gave me no answers, and nothing was said about it other than that. And then in the document they gave me explaining the matter, simply said insubordination, and said nothing more. It was just that simple word on there. So I am definitely happier now that I am no longer responding to an employer, as people tend to be super unreasonable with me. And that is all I have for you today. Feel free to write a comment if you have one. Leave a like if you find this enjoyable at all. And subscribe to my channel, One Wall, to get informed of future content. Thank you for supporting my channel, and enjoy.